Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of A God Shift. I'm your host, Shayna Rattler. I'm so thrilled that you're here today, but before we get started, I have a favor to ask you. So, wherever you're listening to this episode, I want you to take a screenshot. And with that screenshot, I want you to post it on your social media, tag us here at A God Shift, and then I just want to hear your biggest aha moment or your biggest takeaway from this episode. And I do that not necessarily because I care about the number of downloads, but what I know is there's a lot of people out there that really want to do their part to uphold Christian values, and everyone doesn't know where to start. So the more times that these episodes are shared, the more people can be equipped with the tips and the strategies and the tools that we discuss here. So I thank you in advance for being willing to share. Well, I am so excited, you guys. I tell you all the time that I'm excited about my guests, but there have been two guests that I've had in the last couple of months that I'm just over the moon thrilled about, and he is one of those two. So let's get right to it. My guest today is a TV host, news commentator, both as a personality and writer, media producer, and a Christian minister. He has been driving a positive narrative in news stories, the entertainment industry, and social justice, and especially in issues that affect Christianity. Whether you're listening to him interviewing a business leader on his CBN show or podcast, or watching his live news commentary podcast on YouTube, you are bound to come away with a way of seeing things that you hadn't thought of before. He has been interviewed on many popular shows like Fox News, CBN News, 700 Club, Centerpoint TBN News, Praise on TBN, and The Joni Show. As a minister, his deeply connected yet humorous style of speaking, media hosting, and coaching and ability to help everyday people connect to hearing God's voice has brought him around the world to meet with churches, CEOs, entertainers, and world leaders. He is the author of several best-selling books. He is also a contributing journalist online to CBN News Network and Charisma News Network. I am thrilled to welcome to the show, Shawn Bolz.
So glad to be here. This is so exciting. Thanks for having me.
I know. So, audience, just so you know, Shawn has interviewed me twice, once on each one
Yes.
of his shows. And so I'm happy to have him on the opposite side of the camera today. I'm in charge. I get to be the one to ask the tough questions.
Well, I just got back from vacation, so it's perfect. I'm ready
Okay,
to
perfect.
answer
You're
questions.
refreshed. You're
Yes.
refreshed. And for some reason, you told me that you liked the month of June. When I told you that I was going to be interviewing you in June, you're like, oh, great. I love June.
Yeah, we just always have so much happen in June. That's a good thing. I don't know. This is a
Yeah.
God time.
Awesome. So, as you already know, much of what I do is all about two things. Number one, how we can uphold Christian values and how we can mobilize others to blaze that same trail. And as we were discussing before we went live, you and I are both involved in media, secular media, and also faith-based media. And so I really want us to get into a conversation around media today. And I really think that a great place for us to start is what trends are you seeing in media that is actually undermining or challenging our Christian values?
Well, it's pretty obvious, which is good because now everything's on the surface. And that's the first time in probably the entire history of television and film and media that there's an all-time low of trust for media companies, for entertainment companies. Like you don't know if you see the next Disney movie, what's going to be in it right now. People are afraid of Inside Out that's coming out because they don't know. They don't know if it's going to have a lot of agenda and they're not serving their core nuclear family audience anymore. So you have all these different companies that are positioned and taking values that are like really marginalized people group values of maybe that represent maybe 6% of the population and touted in like these should be everyone's values and we should all celebrate them with an equal authority or we're violently acting against them basically. And so the media and entertainment companies have followed suit with their DI protocols to the point where Oppenheimer almost didn't become an Academy Award winner because it was a film with predominantly white people in it, but because they had a number of people of color who were working behind the scenes and a number of LGBTQ plus people behind the scenes that they could actually give awards to. They were able to meet the requirements, even though it was the first time a film that didn't have overt characters in the movie or actors or producers or directors won a film like this since the DI requirements have come out. So they almost weren't eligible, but then they went and they kind of changed the rules and went searching. So we're watching this whole industry change. And some of the DEI, of course, is good. I mean, some of the inclusion stuff is good, but the majority of it is done with a progressive left, almost like communist socialistic agenda. And that sounds like really rhetoric in some ways. But when you look at the actual agenda behind it, it's to normalize things on and to actually indoctrinate so that this becomes normal. Like there's people who are celebrating like the new Acolyte program on Disney the woman who worked for Harvey Weinstein, who produced this, she's so excited about the fact that she hopes that 29% or more of children will become non-binary by the time they've watched the show, but in the next 2 or 3 years. And so there's an agenda. It's not just like entertainment, it's not just media, but there's an agenda that's at war with our core biblical Christian values. It's a war with conservative values. And it doesn't allow those other values to exist. It's like not just saying, hey, you believe that, I believe this. We're on different parts of the continent. It's like you believe that it's violence against what I believe. So we want you in jail.
Correct. Correct. And how do you think that some of this is actually contributing to the current chaos that we see? I mean, there's chaos all around us, not just with, identity crisis and confusion, but like there's literally chaos in every sliver of the world. How is this media stuff that you're
There's
describing right
I
now
don't understand because
contributing to that?
I had to do a news report, and they gave me the copy, and they asked me to kind of clean it up and write it, and it was on a New York Post and Washington Post story where they said right people on the right, they call them the right wing, world, are actually better looking, healthier, and have better work life balance and happiness in their lives than people on the extreme left. And then they showed pictures of what looked like on the extreme left, the Gotham Batman city villains, and then the people on the right who are just like normal looking people of all races and types. And so it's actually contributing to mental illness. And we're seeing that, 1 in every 6 people right now has depression or anxiety. I think it's down to 1 in every 4 for anxiety. You have the suicide rates at an all-time high. When you can't focus on a centered identity of truth and you allow everything else to come in, you have these problems where people don't get rooted or grounded or anchored in structure or anchored in society. I mean, I still believe in a mom and a dad in a home. I believe in a nuclear family. I believe that homes can work well if it's not a mom and a dad. There can be single moms and single dads. But as far as the goal, as far as the majority should probably look to attain a normal nuclear family, because when kids are being raised and they have that father voice, they have that mother voice, they have that balance in their life, I think it produces the best children. Well, we're seeing people move away from that to the point where the feminist movement is saying we don't need men at all anymore. And it's not in the extreme anymore. That's in the center. The abortion movement is saying we should be able to abort all the way until a baby's born. And that should be normalized because it's more important what the rights of the mother than the rights of the child. There's no rights for the child. And so when you have media, the majority of media supporting these, the mainstream media companies, even Fox sometimes are on the fence about certain issues that we're shocked by. Right now, freedom of speech is important. Obviously, I love that Elon Musk took over Twitter because we have to have the freedom to be able to say, I don't agree. And in my disagreement, I shouldn't go to jail for it. I actually believe that the pendulum is swinging back because now everything, like I said, is on the surface. So when you see things swinging back, people are going, well, our ideas aren't working. Like the blue states are not working. People are fleeing them in mass numbers that has never happened since the Civil War. There's never been a mass exodus out of a part of America. And so they're seeing it's not working. Crime rates are all time high. Immigration is worse there than ever everywhere else. All these things are happening. It's so sad for children in those states. And 1 every 4 kids in California is hungry. I mean, that's a huge number of kids. It's like that's a world issue now. It's like a hunger issue the United Nations is asking America about. So I think when I look at it, I go, wow, this media has driven a narrative that doesn't work. And people are no longer trusting it. And now they're looking for truth. And then here comes Shayna. Here
Yeah.
comes maybe us, some of the other different people who are engaging media, who I would have never engaged media if it wasn't for the fact that God directed me out of his prophetic spirit to say, hey, be a voice. Don't
Right.
just be a voice to churches. They know me. Be a voice. Get out there.
And I also hope that church is kind of already taking care of itself. Hopefully they're already giving the right messages and in the right way. I was having a conversation with my fiance a few weeks ago, and we were saying that oftentimes in church we were taught that like self promotion was wrong and that we shouldn't be trying to get on these outlets. And I said, listen, if I'm only going to continue to teach and preach and speak on the church circuit, then the people who already should know the message are the only people that are hearing the message. The way that we're really going to be able to have impact and change some of the chaotic culture that we're seeing, I have to be on Fox. I have to be on some of
Yeah,
these places because those are the people that hopefully need the message more than us. Like you said, they already know you and hopefully they already know the message. That's the only way that our voice is going to be able to be heard is if we are in areas where more people can hear what the message is.
absolutely. And there's so few people doing it. And the people who are doing it give up very quickly. Like everyone starts a podcast and stops after 6 episodes. I
Yeah.
mean, I'm 5 years in, and I think 400 episodes into two different podcasts. And I think the reason why we top the charts, like news commentary, Shane, like in news commentary, I'm in the top 150 every week. And the day the show comes out, I'm in the top 50 next to Anderson Cooper or Dr. Phil, whoever.
Yeah.
And it's only because of two things. Number one is no one else is talking about what I'm talking about in the mainstream world, even though I'm talking about it from completely biblical Christian perspective. And number two is I'm faithful. I keep producing the content. I think those who keep producing the content, because we don't spend marketing dollars. I don't market my stuff. I think it's good to spend marketing dollars. I just haven't had the availability to be able to do that, because the people who market to get an Anderson Cooper in the top 50 podcasts are spending millions of dollars to do that. So when people ask us our marketing plan and we say we don't have one right now on purpose because we're just allowing viral to, we will probably engage marketing some more later on, and I have in the past for stuff, but not for this. People are shocked. But that shows you the need. There's a vacuum out there for Christian voices because your local pastor is trying to pastor people who are on the right and the left, pastor people of different races, pastor people of different sexual preferences, all kinds of things that he's having to try and figure out language where he doesn't exclude them. And so he's not being a voice of cultural issues a lot of times. Now, there's some churches that are an exception to that, but a lot of times they allow cultural issues to be almost wishy-washy. Not all pastors, but it can be like, whatever you believe is fine to be in this church. We just want to love you. We just want to help you. And you're just now seeing a few pastors on both sides who are standing up and saying, this isn't okay, or this isn't okay. Like if you look at prophecy on YouTube, and what are people saying? Prophetically, people are saying the fall of Trump. People are saying Trump's going to make, the next presidency. The fall of Biden's going to make the next presidency. You see people actually standing and saying this, but we haven't seen that until the last 10 years. People
Right.
stayed out of politics. They stayed out of educational reform. They stayed out of racial reform, except for in extremes or when that was their whole platform. And now we're seeing people who are saying, even though I'm this, like I'm a stay-at-home mom, I'm still going to have a podcast. Or even though I'm a business person, I'm going to be, even Mr. Wonderful is doing it. He's like getting involved in politics for the first time from a conservative standpoint. And he's not a conservative, but because
Right.
of how crazy New York is, he's like, I love New York, but it's crazy right now. And so you're watching people who are taking unusual platforms, and God's raising up people, again, for the sake of freedom of voice, because we as Christians are called to be a voice. So he's raising up unlikely allies like the Mr. Wonderfuls of the world, or like the Elon Musk of the world, who are unlikely allies. They're not believers themselves that we know of. And yet they're opening up whole conversations or platforms for us that we can excel on.
Yeah, I love that. You mentioned like Elon and some of the unlikely sources. I guess that's what the Bible meant when it said he'll use even the foolish things to confound the wise.
Totally. Those
Because
Cyruses,
Elon Musk specifically was interviewed, and they asked him something about like afterlife, and he goes, "I've never even really thought about it." And I said, "Well, clearly he's not a believer. He hasn't even thought about where he's going to go after he dies." But
Yeah.
even he is starting to stand up and go, "This stuff is
Or
foolish."
Joe Rogan is a great one. He's the number one media personality in the world right now, the number
Yeah,
one. And he's probably had about 27 conservative Christians over the last 2 years, and listened to them, some who presented the full gospel or presented God's perspective or a good biblical worldview on like aliens or something like that. And he's like, that makes the most sense. So again, arise and shine, for your light has come. And see, there's thick darkness all around us, but you have a light on you, and people will come from afar to listen to you. But we have to, like Jesus said, you are a city on a hill. We're not doing a great job of being on the hills that we don't feel familiar with, or we don't feel like a natural authority to, or natural
yeah,
affinity with. And so that's been hard for me to transition from a normal church ministry going all the way into media, because it's a I don't know, like a minefield.
yeah. Well, I'm glad you're paving the way because I'm right behind you, and I'll probably be calling you to say, "What?"
I call some people right now all the time, like, what do I do about this?
Right. Well, we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to start to talk about some of the things that we can do to see media shift in a more positive direction. We'll be right back. God is commissioning women leaders to uphold Christian values and change the course of history for his glory, and to mobilize other women to blaze the same trail. Want to know what type of kingdom leader you are and learn specific strategies to impact change based on your type? Find out by going to kingdomtrailblazerquiz.com right now. All right, so we're talking about the negative effects of media on our Christian values. So, Shawn, if there is someone who is in Christian media or a Christian in media, because like I said at the beginning, you and I are not just in Christian media, we're Christians that are also in secular media as well. So, looking forward, what proactive steps would you say to someone who is a Christian in media that can begin to portray more of not just a positive message, but really be able to promote our Christian values and start to put an end to some of the current chaos that we're seeing?
Well, there's two roles here because there's one person who, like me, is going to be an overt Christian in both mainstream and Christian media. I'm just going to be overt. I'm not. I don't feel like I'm supposed to be covert. I don't feel like I'm supposed to be a
Right.
stealth missile. And so
Same.
for someone like me, don't back off from speaking the truth. And actually, the argument creates when someone's mad at you for what you believe, it actually creates more context for your what you're saying in the first place. And so I've gone on some panels and some shows and some, some things in different like where there's big names, big well-known people, and I'm the one who sticks out like a left thumb. I'm the one who doesn't make sense because I'll say something that's completely different than everybody else. And I used to be embarrassed by that or like be quiet or only say it, very quietly, let them have the authority. And I look at it, and after I've been around enough influencers, both in the church, but also in business and in especially in entertainment, I realize that we're all kind of imposters. God chooses the
Mhm.
weakest things in the world and raises them up and to compound the wise. So to be bold with what we do know and what we do believe is one of the biggest things is just be bold and not in a way that doesn't allow someone else to have a perspective and not to violate someone else's personal authority or what they believe, but to be bold, to be able to raise the question up. Like well, here's what I believe. How does that affect what you believe versus this is how the way it should go. So many of the Christians who are having conversations are demanding that everybody be on the same page. And it feels very much like the LGBT plus community who's like, if you don't believe in us, you should be eradicated. And
Yep.
Christians do that a lot of times in our conversations. If you don't believe the way we believe, you're irrelevant. And we can't have that going into it. We actually have to have an open heart, an open mind, not an open theology. Our theology has to be set, but we have to have an open mind to someone else's experience. And actually our love has to be turned on in every situation. So that part is really important for someone who's overt. For someone who's covert, you're going to be what maybe St. Francis of Assisi did. We don't know if he said it or not, but we preach Christ daily and sometimes we use words. I just think, I think of some of my friends in the entertainment industry or the media industry right now and just their life of just being consistent in their relationships, consistent in their purity, consistent in their values. That preaches so much after if someone's around you for a
Mhm.
series or someone's around you for 5 years or 10 years, they notice, especially the big studios, they notice like the Disney studio is filled with really good Christians. Now, when I say filled, it's not the majority, it's a small percentage, but there's people who felt to stay on assignment from God as missionaries in the Disney company in big roles. And they're there and people ask them questions when they're having their breakdowns, like, how come you're okay? And that's when you get to preach the gospel. And there's a
Yeah.
time for preaching your life story and sharing your testimony. That's the right time. And I feel like a lot of Christians, we force, it's almost like multi-level marketing. We force a conversation to happen before, and I like multi-level marketing in the right context, but we force a conversation to happen when it should be a relational moment, and we force some sort of agenda in that moment that it's the relationship's not built towards, it's not built within, and so we actually violate the relationship, and therefore we're irrelevant to that person. They don't trust us anymore. So I think knowing how to talk about our values is important, but also just being our values is important. Being who we are, being consistent. And so I've been so proud of some people I've watched now for decades, actually decades. I've watched in the entertainment industry. Like one of my friends, she just got promoted to one of the top streaming services and one of the top positions. And I'm so proud of her because people ask her the big questions all the time, like, how did you get here? How out of everybody, they interviewed all these people, like, how did you get through the process? And how did you get this deal through? And she's able to say, I know this sounds really cliche, but I'm a Christian and I've really prayed into this. And I felt like all the other things trained me for this role. And they're like, oh, tell me about that because your Christianity actually has impact. It actually has influence on your actual life. It's not just a belief system. There's something that's happening in your life because you believe, and people care about that conversation. So I think those are my two main focuses for those two groups.
I think that's great. Well, Shawn, you are a wealth of information. And so I know people are going to want more of you. So, what social media handle can they find you at?
Well, it's SHAWN. That's the right way to spell Shawn for everybody who knows. I'm just kidding. And then BOLZ. So Shawn Bolz. I'm at Instagram and TikTok, and YouTube's our main platform. So people, and also Instagram. We are on Facebook as well, but you can find me pretty much anywhere at Shawn Bolz. And we'd love to interact with you. I do the comment section on my YouTube videos myself. My team helps, but I mean, I get on there every day and respond to comments and connect to our community there, as well as I'm with TBN full time. So you'll see me on TBN a lot. If you like the TBN network, it's really fun. They've done tons of changes, and so I'm really proud of where they're going.
Yeah, I didn't mention that because I wasn't sure if that was for public consumption.
Oh yeah, I don't have my show on there yet, but at my YouTube channel is actually a TBN YouTube channel. It's not overtly, and so they're going after the social media audience. So I'm really glad I started. For those of you who are starting, I'm really glad I started on social media first and not in mainstream radio, television, or
Yeah.
movies first, because there's something about learning your audience and actually connecting to them that's been invaluable for me for the last 5 years.
I agree. Perfect. So I've got your social media here, and if people want to take things further with you, do you recommend they go to the YouTube, or is there somewhere else you would like to send
Yeah,
them?
bowlesministries.com is our ministry website. And if you want to grow in just really just your identity, hearing God's voice, connecting to your relationship with God, anything that's more in the supernatural, and even what your dreams mean, we have an academy on there. We have just great books and resources, lots of e-courses. And so we do have the ministry and that I built out as well. That's staying built the whole time. We have 12 classes, Shana, a year that are 4 weeks each with different
Yeah.
speakers. I do an activation accelerator every month on our platform. So we have a lot going on as far as our platform, but as far as a great entry point, it's YouTube.
Okay, perfect. Well, I'm going to make sure that the links to all of that is in the show notes. So all they have to do is click it. Thank you
Thank you.
so much for being here. Share this, especially with those that you know are in media. I hope that this episode has blessed you and that you will go back and listen to previous and future episodes as well. Everyone have a great day. Bye-bye.
Thank you.